Hi guys, welcome to this video training. This video is specifically for people who are having a difficulty taking action towards improving the quality of whatever they're looking to improve the quality of. That could be improving the quality of your kitchen or your bedroom or something, or your office, or your mind state or your vision or your business, or really anything that could be improved in your life. Maybe it's your body. You want to improve the quality of your body that you're in. That kind of thing. So this video is answer to a question that someone asked about their complaint or their observation about themselves, which is they just constantly, sign up to do things, but then they don't do the work, so they stay stuck or whatever. And I'm going to reverse engineer that for a little bit. There's a couple of reasons of why that exists, why that problem occurs in people's lives, and I just figured that it'd be good to kind of reverse engineer that so we can get a different kind of spin on it that I've found has helped me, and I've found has helped my clients more so than other things that I've learned along my journey. So anyway, let's reverse engineer this a little bit. So how do you facilitate change? That's the question that's really being asked here. And so I'm going to use a couple percentages and a couple different topics to kind of show you what's going on here. And then I'm going to add in a few different concepts, anchors that might be keeping a person stuck. And this is really going to help once we understand these pieces. So check this out. So the first thing is the problem. So most people identify themselves with the problem, and that's exactly what my client is basically saying to me, is that I sign up for new things, I set an intention to do something, and then I don't follow through on it. So that's a person who identifies with the problem. But here's the thing. The problem is only about 5% of your problem. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but I think in terms of my understanding of this, these numbers pretty much represent my emotions and my energy when I think about these topics. So I'm just going to use myself as a guide that way for you. So that's about 5% of the problem. So identifying the problem is about 5% of the issue. Okay. Now what really means is that the problem is just a label. The problem is a descriptor of something more. And that's actually the cost. So basically, if you're only saying that this is my problem, and you're not saying what that problem interferes with or what that problem causes for you in terms of a pain or in terms of some kind of mode of suffering in your life, then just identifying with this is kind of just overwashing a whole bunch of other stuff that's probably really interfering with your life. And if you say this is a problem, then you most likely should be really focused on solving this for yourself. But if you're not, and all you do is stay stuck or don't really engage in the solution, well, then that should tell you that you don't really understand the costs of this. So there's a sequence here that I want to give you guys to do. So the first thing is identify the problem. Okay, so what's the problem? Is the problem that you don't appreciate your husband or your wife? Is the problem that you're not able to receive love? Is the problem that you're not charging enough money for what you do? Is the problem that I just stay stuck or I don't engage in the investments that I make? Is my problem that I don't save my money? Is my problem that I spend too much money? Is my problem, there's so many, is my problem that my wardrobe sucks, or that I need a haircut? These kind of things. Is my problem that my violin needs new strings maybe? What is it? What's the problem that is in your life that's interfering with your happiness or interfering with your level of fulfillment in your life? Okay, so just write that down, and you could write down many problems. Okay, so just go on kind of a problem binge right now. I know a lot of times in this process and in this group, I talk a lot about appreciation and fair exchange, but that's very specific, and that's something that we'll actually use in this process. And this is going to be expanded once we get into September in terms of revamping and upgrading the visionary method. So it'll be quite fun to launch in September. But basically, the problem, what's the problem that you have? Okay, and write that down. Write down the one problem that's driving you crazy, that you identify with the most, that is a problem for you. I mean, it has to actually be a problem for you. If it's not a problem for you, then don't write it down. But if it is a problem for you, if it's something that does create an emotional disharmony for you, that does kind of disturb you internally, and it doesn't feel right, and maybe it's less than your capacity, or you just know that, I'm better than this, and I hate that I keep doing this. If that's what goes on through your mind, then that's a problem, because that's not thinking about how to actually enjoy your time here in your life on this planet. Okay, so first off, write down the problem, write down one, or write down a few. Go on a problem binge, like I said, write down a bunch of problems so you have the data, and at least now you see what you're working with. And the more problems you write down, the more they get out of your head, the more clarity you have on what really the problems are that you're going through. Okay, so next thing here is the costs. So after you've got your problems identified, go into the costs. Now, I also want you to identify that your problems are your problems. So let's just reverse here a little bit. This is your problems. Your problem is not, my wife or my husband does this. Your problem is not, this is occurring in my life, or my, it's not necessarily external stuff relating to people. How you relate to those people is your issue. Makes sense? So if it's a personal thing, or it's related to a person in your life, definitely look at what problem that you have with that person, which is your own internally generated thing. Okay, but if the problem is that you don't clean your house, well, then that's a problem. That's an external thing. So sometimes it can be external things, but very often try to work with the internal language, right? So my house isn't clean. Well, what does that really mean? Well, I don't clean enough, or I'm not delegating cleaning, right? So it's usually an I statement are the problems. And I only say that just because if you act in that way and you think in that way, you're going to keep responsibility on you. And if you're 100% responsible and accountable for your life, that means you're 100% accountable and responsible for changing it. And no one else is really waking up in the morning to do that for you. So you might as well do that for yourself. Make sense? Okay, first one is get the problem down. Second, the cost. The cost is about 25% of your work. Okay, so what I want you to do now is, once you've identified a problem that's real in your life, maybe you've got a bunch written down, but just choose one, and you're going to do a chart like this. So you're going to do, okay, here are all my problems, and these are the costs to me and to the people who I love in my life of this problem. This is a really powerful exercise, guys. This is a game changer for many people. It's basic. It's many books talk about this kind of process, but I'm teaching it in this group right now because I feel it's necessary. And it's necessary in my life too, because one of the challenges I've always had in my life is I have a fear of charging lots of money for what I do. And what I've realized over the past little bit, just training with different mentors, is that that's really not about money. It's about my fears of rejection. It's about all this kind of stuff. But what I started doing was I said, well, the problem is I'm scared of charging money. And then I said, what does that cost me? Holy cow. I did a list of about 50 things that was costing me in my life that were relating to me, were relating to my skills and my talents. They were relating to my relationships, the people who love me in my life, relating to my people who I teach and I train. I just went all out and just started looking, what are the costs of this emotional block that I have? What's it costing my life? And when I really got connected to that, I really started to give up a lot of energy that I was putting attached to how defensive I was towards changing that. This is the piece that you're going to realize, is that when you're identifying with the problem and you're not looking at the costs of it, you're actually defensive of your problem because it keeps you from being aware of this stuff. And that's a subconscious defense mechanism. And it's weird about that because that will actually keep you attached and infatuated with your problem. It actually keeps you addicted to your problem and not really being aware of the costs. But that kind of sucks, because as you move through time in life, what ends up happening is, if you're not aware of those costs will become aware more and more and more and more if you're not consciously aware of these things. So I'm just saying it's wiser to be consciously aware of the costs. So what I want you to do is, about 5% of your time in this process, if you're going to do it, and I recommend you do it, is spend 5% of your time just identifying what the issue is, okay? Then spend 25% of this time that you're going to allocate to this. Maybe you want to allocate 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Just allocate 25% of that time to identifying the costs of that in your life, and go all out, go crazy, go in all areas of your life. The cost to you emotionally, spiritually, mentally, vocationally, in your career, financially, family, social, physical, all that kind of stuff. Your cost to your creativity, cost to your emotional stability and your emotional appreciation, cost to your ability to give and receive affection or appreciation or love, or really anything that you want to give or receive. The cost to other people in your life that care about you. Go all out on this one. It's really powerful to do this, because then you will start really engaging the part of you that wants to shift this the second this becomes more of an issue than the problem itself. Okay, the definer is not the problem. The costs are the problem, okay? Next phase, number 3. Once you've got this stuff written down, now you want to write down, cool, so those are my problems. And maybe you've got, or these are the costs, right? So maybe you've got your problem here, and you've got your costs. Cool. Now what you want to do is, for each cost, what you want to do is say, great, what's what I want instead? What do I want instead of that? And this is an inspirational phase. This one, just by understanding and identifying the polarity or the opposite of what you want, can actually open your heart. It can bring tears to your eyes. This is a really powerful process. Let's say the cost is it's interfering with my ability to love my family. What do I want then? I want to be able to love my family, right? This kind of stuff. And if you keep doing this and you keep just looking at what do you want instead of what you don't want, guess what your mind starts doing? Guess what your focus starts doing? You start actually going in that direction, which is what we all want anyway. Make sense? So most people are stuck here on the identification of the problem, which is a cover story for all these costs. Once people actually look at the cost, they're not interested in this anymore. This kind of gets taken out. Then once you have the cost, now you refocus, and instead of trying to work on these issues, which is what most people do in personal development, you're going to work on the desire, what you want. Why? Because it's 3 times harder, it's been shown, it's 3 times harder to unlearn something than it is to learn something new. So it's always easier to learn something new, and that's way more easier than trying to deal with these things. Make sense? Like if my cost, the cost is it's interfering with my business income. Great. What do I want then? I want higher level of business income. Right. Now if I go and work on my low business income and do all sorts of work on that, all I'm doing is wasting time. And guess what? I didn't make any income when I'm wasting that time. Does that make sense? So let's just refocus. This is a refocus planning tool, okay? So write down the desire. What do you want instead of these costs? And go all out in that and be willing to reward yourself. Like, don't just take this in a way and say, I'd like that to happen. No, what do you really want to happen? What do you really want? Okay, what's the opposite of your costs? What if it was happening would solve those costs? Allow yourself to plan that. Allow yourself to think that way. Allow yourself to just give yourself a little bit of permission, I guess, to think a little bigger. Or think a little bit more easily. Think a little bit more profoundly, I guess. I'm going to put all sorts of words on that, but just think about it that way. Think about going towards this direction and say, what is it you want instead of these costs? Okay? Next thing, what I want you to do is you're going to use the I am, or the integrated appreciation method, on those desires, which equals your worth, which is actually 50% of it. Now, let's reverse engineer that. Why is it that most people don't engage in a new process, or don't engage in something, or don't engage in an intention or a desire? Most people don't engage with it because, 1, they're identified with the problem, not the costs. Huge issue, big no-no, that's not going to do anything for you. That's just semantic land, not going to work. Other people identify with the costs. Okay, if you can see the cost of it, but you're still not doing anything about it. Yeah, probably because you're spending all your fucking time focusing on the costs, not focusing on the result, not focusing on the solution that you want for your life. Okay, very simple, very easy to change, very inspiring to change, and it can really just kind of get you out of a slump really fast. Okay, desire. That's that piece. Now, the next piece is worth. Okay, and this is actually 50% of it, if not more. It's probably all of it, really. I'm just going to put those numbers in there just as a guide for you guys. But this is 50% of your work, okay? And it's actually 50% of the emotional motivation that you're going to have, the emotional energy that you have available to make this shift. And why is that? Because you can have a desire, but if you don't feel worthy of that desire, if you don't feel worthy of that result, well, you're not going to get that result. You're going to repel that result. You're going to unconsciously self-sabotage yourself or self-assist yourself into staying here again at your current level of deserving. Okay, your current level of value, your current level of this is what I deserve in my life. Make sense? So rather than doing that, take each one of these items that you've listed out here in your desire map and then ask, cool, and what would that give me? Or if it's something that it would already give you, then just ask, why would that be important to me? Maybe you want to do the whole process on that, okay? And look at what your desire would give to you. Why is that important to you? How does it help you feel? Where do you feel like? Get those feelings activated. And really spend some time on this. This is why I say 50% of your time should be spent there. Because you really want to make sure these emotions are activated. These chemistries are working, okay? Then what you want to do is you want to say, great, and now what am I going to give to that? Now this is an epically important process, or part of this process. Reason being is this. costs is already what you're giving. But that's what you're giving to your problem. Make sense? I want to completely reframe that. So in this process, first we look at the problem, okay? Then we look at the cost of that problem. That immediately says that this problem is not as terrible as these costs. That means these costs are way more powerful in my life right now. Okay, cool. Desire. This is what I want. What this is helping you do is negate these costs and just focus on there. But if you don't feel you're worth that, or they're not important to you, make sense? Or that's not going to help you feel any different, well, then you're not going to move in that direction. Does that make sense? Because they're not connected to your values. So what I'm saying is that write down the desire map and then do the integrated appreciation process on each one of these things. Do it fast, but just do it well. That's all I'm saying. And you could look at it and just say, why would that be important to me? How would that help me feel? What would that give me? Why would that be important to me? How would that help me feel? Make sense? Where do I feel that right now? How would that help me feel? And what would that feel like is really what I'm asking. What would that feel like? Where do I feel that? Okay. So you want to do that. And then you want to look at, what are you going to give to that? What are you going to give for that? What are you going to add into your life as an action? What are you going to change in your life to create that result? What that does is it gets your brain consciously and subconsciously completely off of this and gets you focused on your desire and why you're worth it. Pretty cool, right? But very powerful in its application. And this one can really help you understand and gain clarity on what is really the problem, which is not the problem. It's the costs of the problem that you just weren't connected to. Well, we just connected to that. Cool. Now what do you want? If you now know the cost, now you know what you want. And now you know where to put your focus. Because focus equals fulfillment. Make sense? If you're unfulfilled and unhappy in your life, it's because your focus is fucked up. Very simple. Okay, don't make this too complicated. And don't go off and use all these other other things to try and be okay with these costs so you can be okay with the problem. Make sense? If you want to change. Allow yourself. Make sense? It's not hard. It's only hard in the beginning because it's different. Make sense? It's only difficult because it's new. It's a change to the norm. But just because it's normal doesn't mean it's good. Make sense? A lot of people settle for normal and then suffer normally. Make sense? Let's not do that. Let's give us a little bit more permission to live a better life. Live a life that's just a little bit more appreciative, a little bit more grateful, a little bit more enjoyable. Does that make sense? Now, so this is what I want. This is what it's going to give me. That's the narcissist. Excuse my spelling. And then the altruist is, what am I going to give for it? Make sense? So these two components are now there, which means now you have your focus, you have your reward, and you have your plan. That's all you really need. And let me tell you, when you start focusing on the desire instead of the costs, okay, you start then focusing on the plan instead of the problem. Make sense? You get the path, which is the giveaway, or the altruism, the thing that you're going to do for it, and why it's going to be important to you and how it's going to help you live your life. And this is why you're worth it. Very cool questions. Make sense? And this is how I operate in my life right now. And it's been very helpful for me because I've had some very long lasting emotional challenges, emotional fears, emotional blocks, walls that I put up. And it was only until I started looking at it in this way. Because I used to be the kind of guy who's like, oh yeah, I've got this problem. Great, how does that serve me? How does that serve me? Everything serves me, great. But like, was that actually leading to a sustainable fulfillment, a sustainable happiness? No. Actually, it was leading to a sustainable suffering, long term. Because the minute I got over seeing how it served me, I'd go back to just being in pain. Because I'm living in the costs of the problem instead of actually just identifying and honoring that they're real, engaging and feeling that pain. And then realizing that I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have something else. Right here, focus on something new. Why are you worth it? What is it going to give to you? How's it going to help you feel? What are you going to do for it? Why would it be important to you to get that result? Make sense? How would that help you feel? Why are you worth that? Another good question. Why are you worth that? Make sense? A very cool tool, and if you do nothing else at the beginning of September, if you're going to continue in the group, please do this process. And if this is a good takeaway you take from the group for the month of August, hey, power to you, because this is a really powerful process and it will serve you very well in your life. All right, thanks for watching this one, guys, and I will see you guys in the Q&As.